The classified ad was simple. Piano for sale, $200. Must go this week. Sarah Mitchell, 17, stared at her father's beloved upright piano through tear-blurred eyes. 3 months after losing him to cancer, the bills were piling up, and her mother's salary as a nurse barely covered their rent. The piano, her father's most prized possession, had to go. She posted the ad on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, a black Cadillac pulled up to their modest Memphis home. A man in dark sunglasses stepped out, and Sarah's world was about to change forever. Sarah ran her fingers across the piano keys one last time, the ivory worn smooth by decades of her father's touch. James Mitchell had been a session musician in Memphis during the 1950s, playing backup for dozens of artists at Sun Studio before settling into a quieter life teaching music. This piano had been his constant companion. "You don't have to do this, honey," her mother whispered from the doorway, her nurse's scrubs still on from the morning shift. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the mark of someone working double shifts to keep the lights on. "Yes, I do," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The medical bills sat in a manila folder on the kitchen counter, a constant reminder of their new reality. Her father's life insurance had covered the funeral, but nothing more. The experimental treatments in his final months had drained everything. The piano had been appraised at $3,000, but Sarah knew that in their neighborhood, with families struggling just like theirs, nobody had that kind of money. She'd started at $500, then dropped it to $200 when no one called. At this point, she just needed it gone before the weight of memory crushed her completely. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "I'm interested in the piano. Can I see it today?" The text was brief, almost curt. No haggling about price, no questions about condition. Just a simple request. Sarah typed back their address, her hands trembling. In 3 hours, her father's legacy would belong to a stranger, and she would lose the last physical connection to the man who had taught her everything that mattered. The Cadillac was impossible to miss, sleek, black, and completely out of place on their street of aging Hondas and pickup trucks. Sarah watched from the window as a tall man emerged, his movements deliberate and careful. He wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and a scarf covered the lower half of his face. Her mother had left for her second shift, leaving Sarah alone to handle the sale. She opened the door as he approached, and something about his presence made her step back instinctively, not from fear, but from an inexplicable sense of reverence. "I'm here about the piano," he said softly, his voice carrying a familiar cadence that Sarah couldn't quite place. Southern, definitely, but refined in a way that spoke of someone who'd traveled far from their roots. "It's in the living room," Sarah managed, leading him inside. Their home was clean but sparse. The walls marked by lighter rectangles where pictures and decorations had once hung sold off piece by piece over the past months. The man stopped when he saw the piano, removing his sunglasses slowly, his eyes impossibly blue and somehow ancient, fixed on the instrument with an expression Sarah couldn't read. It was somewhere between nostalgia and pain. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the bench. Sarah nodded, watching as he sat down with practiced ease. His hands hovered over the keys for a moment, as if greeting an old friend. Then he began to play. The music that filled their small living room was unlike anything Sarah had heard before. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was alive, each note carrying emotion that words could never capture. She recognized the song, something from the 50s her father used to hum, but she'd never heard it played like this. "Your father was James Mitchell," the man said, not as a question, but as a statement. His hands stilled on the keys, and he turned to face Sarah directly. He played at Sun Studio, 1954 to 1956. Sarah's breath caught. "How did you know that?" The man reached into his jacket and pulled out an old photograph. its edges yellowed with age. It showed a young man, unmistakably her father, standing next to a piano in a recording studio. Beside him, arm draped casually over his shoulder, was a young Elvis Presley. "Your father taught me how to play piano properly," the man said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Everyone thinks I was just a guitar player who couldn't read music. But your father, he sat with me for hours, teaching me theory, teaching me how to feel the keys instead of just hitting them." Sarah's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch. This couldn't be real. Elvis Presley had died in 1977. She'd learned about it in history class. But as she looked at this man, really looked at him, she saw the resemblance. Older, yes, thinner. But those eyes, that voice? "That's impossible," she whispered. "You're dead." He smiled sadly. "I needed to disappear, Sarah. The world was crushing me. Your father was one of 3 people who knew the truth. He kept my secret until his dying day. I read about his passing in the papers. I'm sorry I couldn't come to the funeral. Too many cameras, too many questions. But when I saw this ad, I knew it was his piano. I had to come." He played another song, one Sarah had never heard, and suddenly she understood. This wasn't about the piano. This was about paying respects to a friendship that had transcended fame and time. "I can't take your father's piano," Elvis said, standing from the bench. "But I can't let you sell it for $200 either. This instrument has history. It has soul. It deserves better." He reached into his jacket again and pulled out an envelope. "Inside is enough to cover your mother's bills and then some. Consider it payment for all the lessons your father gave me, lessons I never properly compensated him for." Sarah's hands shook as she took the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000. Her vision blurred with tears. "I can't accept this," she stammered. "It's too much." "Your father saved my life once," Elvis replied, his voice firm but gentle. "Not physically, but musically. When I was drowning in expectations and pills and pressure, he sat me down at a piano, just like this one, and reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. He asked for nothing in return, except that I promised to stay true to the art. I failed him in that promise. I let the world turn me into a caricature. But I never forgot his kindness." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Keep the piano, Sarah. Learn to play it. Your father told me once that he hoped you discover music on your own terms, not because he pushed you. Maybe now's the time." "Wait," Sarah called out. "Why did you really come? You could have sent the money anonymously." Elvis turned back, and for the first time, he looked truly vulnerable. "Because your father was dying, he wrote me a letter. He said he worried about you and your mother, about what would happen after. He asked me to watch out for you if I could. I promised him I would." He walked back and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your father was a better man than I ever was. He lived a quiet life of service while I chased spotlights. But he was happy, Sarah. That counted for more than anything I achieved." 6 months later, Sarah sat at her father's piano, her fingers moving across the keys with growing confidence. The bills were paid, her mother had cut back to 1 shift, and Sarah had enrolled in music school for the fall. The man in the dark sunglasses never returned. But sometimes Sarah found unmarked envelopes in their mailbox concert tickets. Music books, small notes of encouragement written in a familiar slanted script. She never told anyone about that afternoon. Some secrets were meant to be kept, just as her father had kept his. But every time she played, she felt 2 presences guiding her hands, her father's steady patience and a king's forgotten kindness. The piano wasn't for sale anymore. It never would be. Want more stories of unexpected kindness and hidden legacies? Follow us for tales that remind us humanity still shines in the darkest moments.